He gazed straight into my sight, his tone tranquil, as if he was merely requesting an extra portion of potatoes, and declared, "The finest holiday present would be for you to just pass away." That was my son, my sole child. If you're tuned into this, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share a comment about your location. So I provided him with precisely what he desired, but not before I terminated their mortgage, drained every bank account, and placed something on his desk that caused his seemingly perfect existence to crumble in an instant. You want your mother gone? Be mindful of what you wish for. If you're viewing this, please subscribe and let me know where you are. I need your likes and comments to know you're keeping up with my narrative. All of it occurred 3 days prior to Christmas, in the residence I had helped finance, but where I never genuinely felt at home. I was folding linens in the utility room, warm vapor rising from the machine as I arranged the soft fabric into tidy piles. The entrance was slightly ajar. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop. Goodness, I wish I hadn't. Dean's voice came through, low and bitter. Honestly, the best present this year would be if she just passed away. My hands froze mid-fold. I stared at the crimson towel, as if it had transformed into glass. Charlotte's voice followed, nonchalant as if they were just discussing clothing. You said it, not me. The quiet that followed was worse than the words themselves. My son, my only child. I waited, my heart pounding, hoping he'd laugh it off, claim it was a joke, say something human. But he didn't. He just sighed. It's draining with her always being here. We can't keep living like this. I pressed my palm against the counter to steady myself. The towel slid from my hands. I didn't care. "She's not going anywhere soon," Charlotte said with her own sigh. "I guess we'll just have to deal with it until then." I retreated from the doorway before I screamed or wept or fell apart right there. My knees barely held me as I ascended the staircase to the in-law apartment they so generously permitted me to occupy. The one they never allowed me to decorate, the one without locks. I settled on the edge of the bed, gazing at nothing until my vision blurred. My fingers sought the small journal on the nightstand, the one with shopping lists and reminders to restock my medication. I turned to a clean page and transcribed it, precisely. The best present this year would be if she just passed away. I read it once, twice, trying to convince myself I'd misheard, but I hadn't. My own son, the infant I endured 28 hours of labor for, wished me dead so he could have a more peaceful holiday. The man who wept at his wedding, the man who called me his savior at his father's memorial. I contemplated all the instances I'd left extra cash in his kitchen drawer when they were struggling financially that month. The childcare, the groceries, the 6-figure sum I provided them to acquire this dwelling. All of it seemed meaningless now. I surveyed my small quarters, the off-white walls, the single chest of drawers, the folded linens in the corner when the grandchildren wanted to stay over. They hadn't wanted to in months. My throat tightened, but no tears came. Just a gnawing ache, a profound, empty ache that spread through my chest and settled in my bones. I stood and walked to the wardrobe, opened it, and stared at the luggage I hadn't used since moving in 2 years ago. The small one still had the airline label from the cruise I'd canceled when Dean lost his employment. I bent down, unzipped it, and pulled out the pouch I'd secured inside the lining years ago, the one labeled contingency plan. My deceased husband always advised me, trust people with your emotions, not your finances. I hadn't heeded his words, but I remembered them as I retrieved the co-ownership agreement and the title with my name still on it. Dean had never filed the updated documents. I never paid the legal professional to complete the paperwork that would remove me. He kept saying he'd get to it, but he never did. I smoothed the contract flat on the bed, and for the first time, my hands felt steady, composed, as if they recalled how to safeguard me. I picked up a pen, and beneath Dean's name on the document, I wrote 4 small words. I heard you, Dean. I remained in that room for the majority of the night, barely blinking, unable to rest. Every time I closed my eyes, his voice replayed in my mind. The best present this year would be if she just passed away. My own son. It burned deeper than the words themselves, and worse, The way Charlotte didn't even flinch when he said them, as if it were a simple truth, as if my passing would be a relief. The next morning, I was perched at the kitchen counter, sipping lukewarm coffee and pretending my stomach wasn't twisted in knots. Dean shambled in first, rubbing his eyes like a child who had overslept. "Morning," he grumbled, and I couldn't reply. If I opened my mouth, I was certain I'd scream. Charlotte entered, her hair styled, makeup perfect, scrolling on her phone without genuinely looking at me. They moved around the kitchen as if nothing had happened, as if they hadn't just shattered me the previous night. "Are you okay?" Dean finally inquired. "You appear pale." "Just tired," I fabricated. "Perhaps try some melatonin," Charlotte suggested, not looking up. "It works wonders." I wanted to laugh until I bent over. Does melatonin mend having a son who desires your death? Instead, I started my coffee, forced a nod, and observed the small Christmas tree blinking in the living area. The kids had created paper snowflakes last week and secured them to the windows. I helped with those. Always helped. Every year since I moved in, I labored to make the holidays feel enchanting. Garlands, crafts, even the coordinating pajamas Charlotte adored for social media. 2 years ago, when Dean called me in tears because his loan fell through, I sold my house, the home their father and I had built, and transferred $120,000 to his account that same week. When the real estate agent inquired whose name should be on the deed, I said both. Dean assured me I'd always have a place. "You'll live with us," he said. "The kids will adore having you nearby." I believed him. God, I believed every word. I moved into the in-law suite with 2 pieces of luggage and my late husband's favorite armchair. Charlotte claimed my old furniture didn't suit her aesthetic, so it remained outside. Now, I couldn't enter a room without asking for consent. Don't move the sofa. Don't rearrange the pantry. Don't use that bathroom when we have visitors. I was a phantom in the house I paid for. Quiet, cautious, folding towels, acquiring groceries, biting my tongue every time Charlotte rolled her eyes. "Can you pick the kids up from school today?" Dean asked, yanking me back into the present. "Charlotte has a nail appointment, and I need to take the car in." "Of course," I said, the same way I always did. My voice was steady on the outside. Inside, I was disintegrating. I sipped my coffee just to keep my hands occupied. He looked at me properly, looked at me, and said, "Seriously, are you upset about something?" "Why would I be upset?" I managed. "No reason. I'm fine." He nodded and left. Charlotte didn't say a word. She just stood by the refrigerator eating yogurt from the container and texting, her acrylics tapping. I wanted to smash that phone, but instead I cleaned the mugs, wiped the counters, and kept moving. That's what mothers do. I went upstairs to the guest room, my room, and pulled open the drawer where I kept papers I hadn't touched in years. The deed, the co-ownership agreement, a notarized letter from the lawyer. My name was still there, clear as day. They never bothered to file the documents to remove me. They claimed it wasn't necessary because we were family. I stared at my signature, neat and trusting, and then at my reflection in the window, older than I recalled, worn down, weary. I brushed my fingers along the edge of the paper and whispered, "Perhaps it's time I remembered whose name is still on this house." I sat on the bed for what felt like an eternity, holding that deed as if it were the last piece of evidence that I hadn't imagined the years I'd given, the sacrifices I'd made. Without even thinking, my hand reached into the drawer where I kept old correspondence, the kind you only open when something has gone wrong. The envelope on top had the mortgage company's insignia. I tore it open slowly, not out of anxiety, but because deep down I already knew it wouldn't be good. Past due. I read the words twice, 3 times. They were 3 months behind. 3. I shot to my feet as if the betrayal was too heavy to sit with. At the small desk in the corner, I opened my laptop. I hadn't checked the account in a long time, the one I set up when I first moved in just in case they required assistance. After the second year, I stopped keeping track because Dean always behaved as if my money was just there if he needed it.
Apparently, he had needed it repeatedly. Thousands gone. Quiet, small withdrawals. Always his hand, never asking. The joint account meant for emergencies had turned into his personal ATM. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the figures until my stomach churned. Groceries, utilities, random charges from hardware stores. I wasn't just living with them. I was funding them. Every time I thought I was assisting, I was really just cleaning up their mess, silently, without thanks. The front door creaked open downstairs. Charlotte's voice floated up, loud and cheerful, far too cheerful for someone 3 months behind on the mortgage. Then Dean's laughter followed. "Don't tell my mom, she'll freak out." "She's not even up here," Charlotte replied. "She's always in her little cave." My hands clenched tight. I crept to the stairwell, standing just far enough that they couldn't see me. "That emergency account is empty," Dean said bluntly. "Completely drained. I checked this morning." "What about her other one?" Charlotte asked. "The one you said she used for holiday gifts?" "She barely touches it. She's traditional. Still writes checks for everything. Maybe she won't even notice if you withdraw a little. It's only a few hundred." "That's not the point," he snapped. "I'm not stealing from my mother." I held my breath, waiting, hoping for remorse to soften his voice. It never came. Just a sharp, "I'll figure something out." I backed away before they could spot me. Back in my room, I sank into the desk chair, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it rattled my ribs. I clicked into the other account, the one I hadn't touched since Frank passed away. My small safety net. Just over $18,000, still there, untouched, concealed because for once I listened to my intuition instead of my heart. I closed the laptop and started pacing, whispering to myself, "You're not insane. You're not overreacting. They've been draining you dry." My head was buzzing with questions I didn't want the answers to. How many times had I rescued them without even realizing it? How many grocery trips had been paid for with my credit card? How many bills covered just this once with money I wasn't supposed to touch? I thought that was the worst of it until I heard my son's voice behind me. "Hey, Mom, you got a minute?" I turned slowly. Dean was standing in the doorway, flashing that fake smile. Easy charisma as if nothing had happened. "Sure," I said, keeping my voice steady. "What's going on?" "Charlotte and I were thinking maybe after the holidays we could talk about reorganizing some of the finances, just to make things more manageable." "More manageable for whom?" "For all of us," he added quickly. "I mean, you've got money sitting in that emergency account. Maybe we should combine everything under one umbrella so nothing slips through the cracks. You could manage it." "Well, yeah, I already handle most of the bills. It just makes sense." I let the silence hang long enough for him to shift on his feet. "I'll consider it," I said finally, "but that money is still mine." "Of course," he said. "I just meant—" "No," I cut him off. "You meant what you said, and I heard you. All of it." He blinked. "What?" "Nothing," I said quietly. "I just need some air." I walked past him, down the stairs and out the front door before I lost it. The cold air hit me hard, but I didn't care. I walked around the block, trying to calm the tempest building in my chest. Every step felt like a countdown. I wasn't the one falling apart anymore. They were, and they had no idea how close I was to walking away and taking everything with me. I walked until my legs ached. When I returned, no one asked where I'd gone. Dean was on the couch watching a game. Charlotte was in the kitchen lighting one of those expensive candles she loves to post online. I went straight to my room, locked the door, and pulled out the envelope I taped under the bottom drawer 2 years ago. Frank's handwriting was still on the label. Contingency plan. My heart ached just seeing it. He always told me to hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. I'd never thought I'd need this. I opened it slowly, as if it might detonate. Inside was everything. Copies of the co-ownership deed, correspondence from the lawyer, a list of the account numbers Frank had made me keep separate. He'd insisted we protect ourselves, even from family, especially from family. I resented him for being right. I called Eleanor, the lawyer Frank and I had trusted for decades. She answered on the third ring. "Maureen, is everything okay? I need to know if the paperwork we filed on the house is still valid, the one with my name on the deed." She paused. "Of course it is. You never signed the removal. Dean never filed it. So you still legally own 40%. "Yes. Why?" I sank into the chair and whispered, "Because they want me dead, Eleanor, and they don't even conceal it anymore." Her voice dropped. "Tell me what transpired." I told her everything. The conversation I overheard, the drained accounts, the past due mortgage, and now their push to control my last savings account. They weren't even pretending to care anymore. "Maureen, we can act. You have power here. You're not trapped." "I don't want vengeance," I said. "I want out, but I want out on my terms." "Then we will draft a notice of intent to sell. I'll have it ready tomorrow." I closed my eyes. "Ensure it goes to both of them. I want this to hit hard." After we hung up, I opened my suitcase for the first time in years and began to pack, not in panic, not out of dread. As I was done, I folded each piece of clothing as if I was folding away the version of me that had tolerated too much for too long. I packed lightly. One suitcase, one handbag, my passport. I called the airline and used the points I'd been saving for a decade. The woman on the other end of the line sounded bright and cheerful when she asked, "And where will you be flying, Miss Harper?" "Paris," I said. My voice didn't even tremble. "One way." As I zipped my suitcase, Dean knocked. "Mom, got a second?" I kept packing. "Sure." He stepped inside, his eyes catching on the suitcase, his brow furrowed. "Going somewhere?" "Thinking about it." "Is this about earlier? Look, I was just frustrated. Things are tight right now." "I know they are," I said, still folding my clothes. "That's why I'm leaving." "You don't have to do that." "No." I turned and met his eyes. "I really do." "Is this about the money? Mom will figure it out. You don't need to stress." I tilted my head. "Then why did you empty the joint account?" He blinked. "It was an emergency." "Which one?" I asked calmly. "The mortgage, the credit cards, or Charlotte's new footwear?" "Don't do this," he said, his voice turning sharp. "You stopped treating me like family the day you said my death would be a gift." His face went pale. "You heard that?" "All of it." Walked past him, opened the top drawer, pulled out the legal envelope, and handed it to him. "What's this?" I didn't answer. I watched his hands tremble as he opened it. "You're forcing a sale, or you can buy me out. Your choice." "You can't be serious, Mom." "I'm flying to Paris in 2 days. Believe me, I've never been more serious." He stared at the paper. "We don't have that kind of money." "Then you'd better find it," I said evenly, "because contingency plan B is already in motion." The next morning, I woke up to Charlotte screaming. At first, I thought something had happened to the children, but then I heard Dean downstairs. "I don't know. I paid it. Well, I thought I did." I walked to the top of the stairs. They were both in the kitchen, their faces red and frantic. The Christmas tree in the living room was dark. No lights, no music, no fake fireplace flickering on the television. December 24th. The power had been disconnected. "This can't be happening," Charlotte snapped, slamming the refrigerator door.
We have visitors arriving tomorrow. My mother is flying in from Chicago. We'll resolve it, Dean said. Just calm down. Calm down? Her voice cracked. Did you forget to pay the electricity bill? No, he said, stopping himself. You thought... What? I asked, stepping slowly down the stairs. Dean looked at me like a deer caught in headlights. You thought I'd pay it? My voice remained low. I didn't need to raise it. I mean, haven't you been? No, Dean, not anymore. He rubbed his forehead. You're really doing this now. You told me to vanish, I said. This is me vanishing, quietly, responsibly, just out of the way like you wanted. Charlotte stared at me. You can't just cancel payments without telling anyone. You mean like you canceled my presence in this house months ago. I walked to the kitchen, opened the cabinet, and pulled down a wrapped tin of cookies I'd baked for the girls. You made your choice. I'm making mine. I set the tin on the counter and turned back toward the stairs. What are we supposed to tell the kids? Dean called after me. They'll wake up tomorrow to a freezing house and no lights. Perhaps tell them the truth, that some gifts come with a price, and you've run out of credit. I spent the day completing the little packing I had left. Folded sweaters, 2 scarves, 1 good coat. My passport was already tucked into the front pocket of my carry-on bag. Around 3 in the afternoon, I crept downstairs while they were arguing in the garage. I placed a small gift for each grandchild under the tree. Just 1 each. No ribbons, no glittery bags, just simple brown paper with their names scribbled in thick marker. Inside each box was a letter from me. The letters I left for the children weren't goodbyes. They were just affection, memories, and reminders that none of this was ever their fault. Back upstairs, I sat on the bed with my suitcase at my side. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. But deep down, something still felt amiss. Right before dinner, my phone buzzed. Eleanor had emailed the official notice to Dean's and Charlotte's personal inboxes. Subject line, Notice of Intent to Sell, Maureen Harper. Perfect timing. The lights never came back on. Around 7, Charlotte stormed into the kitchen, snatched her car keys, and left without saying a word. Dean ran after her, yelling. I didn't follow. I stayed in my room, listening to them fall apart, piece by piece. At 4 in the morning, I rolled my suitcase down the hallway and stairs as quietly as I could. The house was dark, cold, silent. I paused in the entryway, my hand on the door handle, my heart pounding, but steady. I pulled it open slowly and stepped outside. Snow was just beginning to fall, a thin, dusty layer settling on the steps. I closed the door behind me, walked to the edge of the driveway where the airport shuttle waited, and climbed inside. As the driver pulled away, I looked back once. The tree in the window was still dark. Not a single light blinked. That was their Christmas, and they didn't even know what my genuine gift was yet. I arrived in Paris just afternoon, and I didn't cry once on the flight. Not when the plane took off, not when the captain welcomed us to Charles de Gaulle, not even when the man sitting beside me asked if I was meeting family. No, I told him with a small smile. I left them behind. I wheeled my suitcase through the airport with steady hands and a tranquil mind. The taxi ride into the city was long, but I didn't mind. Holiday banners stretched across the buildings. People rushed by in warm coats, couples holding hands. No one knew who I was, and for the first time in years, that wasn't frightening. It felt like liberation. I met with Marie, an old acquaintance of Frank's from his university days. She pressed apartment keys into my hand and said, "Stay as long as you need." I thanked her, and I meant it. I unpacked just enough, 2 drawers, 1 small closet. I made tea, opened the window, and sat quietly. That night, I zipped my coat up to my chin and walked along the Seine.
The air stung my face, but it made me feel alive. I wasn't floating in someone else's house anymore. I wasn't invisible. I was here. I'd barely closed the door behind me when my phone buzzed again. Then Dean, then Charlotte. Again and again. Missed calls, unread messages. I didn't open them. I didn't need to. I already knew precisely what they were saying. The next morning, I opened my email and saw a message from Eleanor. Subject line, "You might want to read this." She'd forwarded the thread from the mortgage company. Dean had called them in a panic. "The mortgage is in jeopardy. We're in default. Maureen Harper isn't responding. She must be traveling. She's not part of the household anymore." Eleanor's reply was short and sharp. "Miss Harper remains a co-owner, and she is fully within her rights to act accordingly." I read it twice, then wrote back, "Please handle everything through legal channels. I'm unavailable for direct contact." I was standing by the window watching the Eiffel Tower sparkle against the night sky when my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Dean. It was the mortgage lender. "Is this Miss Maureen Harper?" "It is." "We're calling about a co-owned property that is currently in arrears. We've received your legal filing, but we'd like to confirm your intentions moving forward." "My lawyer will handle everything," I said calmly. "Please direct all communication to her." "Miss Harper, are you aware the other party has expressed difficulty meeting the current payment obligations?" "Yes," I said. "I'm aware." "And you still wish to proceed with the intent to sell?" I stared out at the street below. "Yes, I do." After I hung up, I flipped my phone over and set it face down on the table. I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. I was taking up space, claiming space, for the first time in years. I grabbed the back of a grocery receipt and made 2 columns. One was titled "Things They Took," the other "What I Have Left." The first list was long: time, money, trust, holidays, my voice, my place. The second list was shorter: dignity, proof, control, a passport, and now Paris. The next morning, Eleanor emailed again. "They're begging to negotiate. Are you ready?" I didn't reply right away. I stood at the window, fingers curled around my mug, watching the world keep moving forward as though I'd never existed in theirs. My son had thought he could break me. What he didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that I wasn't just gone. I was building a life where their access had been revoked. One breath, one page, one email at a time. I waited until the first week of January, not out of kindness, but because I wanted the silence to stretch. I wanted them to sit in it. Cold nights, overdue bills, no idea where I'd gone or if I was ever coming back. Then I mailed the letter. Not an email, not a text, not a call, a real letter. Sealed in a plain white envelope with Dean's name on the front, in my handwriting. I knew he'd recognize it. I paid extra for next day delivery. And then I waited. It didn't take long. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with an incoming video call from him. I didn't answer. A minute later, another from Charlotte. Then a text from her. "How dare you?" I smiled and set the phone on the coffee table. I'd written the letter with care. No rage, no insults, just truth. Hard, uncomfortable truth. I'd itemized every dollar I'd contributed, every payment I'd made, every sacrifice they'd forgotten. I wrote about the night I overheard them, the power outage, the silence, the lies. And then I wrote the final paragraph. This house was a gift. So was I. You lost both. You can either refinance the mortgage on your own or sell and downsize. Either way, I'm done covering for people who only see me as a burden. Consider this your final Christmas gift. The phone rang again and again.
I finally answered on the third try. "What were you thinking?" Dean snapped. "You mailed a letter like this? You gave me no choice. You disgraced us." "You disgraced me first," I said evenly. Over and over. "We didn't mean it." "Yes, you did. And now you get to live with it." "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I gave you exactly what you asked for," I said. I disappeared. He paused, and for a moment, I thought I heard him choke up. "You blindsided us, Mom." "No," I said softly. "You just weren't paying attention." I ended the call before he could respond. I leaned back on the couch, took a deep breath, and looked out the window at the narrow Parisian street below. A couple walked by laughing. A man in a scarf carried a baguette under his arm. Life kept moving. I hadn't thought about vengeance when I wrote that letter. It wasn't vengeance. It was about reclaiming what had been chipped away at for years. My worth. That letter wasn't written to harm. It was written to end the bleeding. To stop pretending that love means letting yourself be drained dry. Later that night, another message came from Charlotte. Just one sentence. "You've ruined us." That was Charlotte's message. I read it twice, then deleted it without a second thought. Their ruin wasn't my doing. It was their entitlement, their manipulation, their belief that I'd keep giving no matter how cruel they became. My only crime was finally saying no. I poured a glass of wine, sat by the window, and opened the little notebook I'd been keeping. At the top of the next page, I wrote one word: freedom. Just below it, another. Finally. Someone who stopped bleeding for people who never offered a bandage. That night, I went out for dinner alone to a small restaurant near Blair. The waiter asked if I was celebrating something. I almost said no. Then I smiled. "Yes," I said. I didn't explain. I didn't owe him that. I didn't owe anyone anything anymore. When I got back to the apartment, I poured another glass of wine and opened my notebook. This time, I titled the page, "What I Will Never Do Again." I wrote, "I will never beg to be respected. I will never explain myself to people who only listen to respond. I will never call it love if it leaves me empty." My phone buzzed once more. A photo from Dean. The Christmas tree half lit, ornaments sparse, the kids asleep in the background. No message, no caption, just the image. I stared at it for a few seconds, then turned my phone off and closed the notebook. I wasn't swimming back. That bridge had burned, and I didn't miss the smoke. The final papers came through on a Tuesday morning. The apartment was silent except for the soft ticking of the kitchen clock. I sat at the little table with the documents in front of me, reading each line one more time. It was all official now. The house was sold, the debts were settled, the accounts were cleared. Dean and Charlotte would get what was left. It wasn't much, but it was fair. My name had been removed cleanly and legally. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel sad either. So I packed the folder, slid it into my carry-on, and checked the clock again. My train was arriving soon. As I zipped the suitcase, my phone buzzed. A voice message from Dean. I hesitated, then pressed play. "You win," he said. His voice sounded flat, tired. "We're moving into an apartment near Charlotte's mom. The kids don't understand what's happening. Neither do I, really, but I guess it's what we deserve. If that's what you needed, you got it." I didn't reply, not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood something. His pain wasn't mine to manage anymore.
I'd spent years absorbing guilt, blame, and the heaviness of everyone else's chaos. I wasn't doing that anymore. I stood at the window watching the Paris traffic slide by. Then I turned, rolled my suitcase to the door, and locked the apartment behind me. The taxi driver helped load my bags. "Business or vacation?" he asked. "Closure," I said quietly. He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. At the station, I found my seat, leaned back, and watched the city blur past the window. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who kept the peace, who swallowed her voice to hold the family together. That woman was gone. She didn't just leave, she evolved. My thoughts drifted to the kids. I missed them. That part still ached, but I'd left each of them something. Letters, photos, memories. One day they'd read those letters. One day they'd understand that love isn't measured by how much you give until there's nothing left. Love lives in the boundaries you draw to survive. I pulled out my notebook one last time. At the top of the final page, I wrote, I didn't just walk away, I walked toward myself. I stared at those words, then added one more line beneath them. Let them learn from the echo of my absence. As the train rolled forward, so did I. Not toward vengeance, not toward regret, but toward peace. The kind you earn, not the kind you beg for. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you've been through something like this, share your story in the comments.